Hey friends, welcome back to my channel and Happy New Year. I hope you had a lovely Christmas despite all the difficulties going on in the world at the moment. I know that things will be very tough for a lot of people going forward into this year as well, so I hope that the people who do need support are getting it. Luckily for my mother and I, we have been financially stable since my redundancy a few months ago, so we have been able to celebrate Christmas in the way that we like to do, in the way that we're accustomed to doing, especially after the last couple of years where nobody could really do anything. It's been nice to celebrate Christmas in a more normal way again. So I've been out to see a theatre show with a couple of friends. I've been out to see various Christmas lights and displays and other bits and pieces in London. And I've also eaten far too much, of course, and watched various things on TV. So there's all sorts of things to mention in this post, as per usual. But as always, this video is only ever a summary. There's a lot more detail in the blog post, so go and read that if you want much further detail on these things. But it's not been without its issues entirely this Christmas, of course. I couldn't get down to Devon for a start to see my ex-colleagues for a Christmas meal. We were planning to have a little reunion because of the train strikes and also the weather. Either one of them happening would have put the kibosh on it, but both together just absolutely ensured it was impossible to get there. And then early this month, in January, as I'm filming this, my mother and I picked up a bit of a bug from a visit to the GP surgery. We basically went there for an appointment and mum fell ill the next day. She's doing all right. She seems to be getting gradually better, and I've picked up whatever bug she's got. So it could be COVID, it could be flu, but we've both been vaccinated against both of those. Okay, just a quick update for the edit. Mum and I have both tested positive for COVID, which we kind of suspected was the case, but it's nice to know. But we are doing well. We are getting better pretty quickly already. So the vaccinations are clearly doing their job, I think. So yeah, first time in 3 years we've had that knowingly. So yeah, just nice to get out of the way at the start of the year. At least it left it until after Christmas. So yeah, get it out of the way and then hopefully the rest of the year will be nice and clear then. My symptoms are very, very mild at the moment. Mum's been worse, but again, not too bad. Still pretty mild, really, on the whole. If it means I don't end up doing much in January after all, then I'll just combine January and February into a joint favourites video at the beginning of March. But I've got other things I want to do on my blog in the meantime anyway. But yeah, I just wanted to get this video done and dusted, basically, get it out of the way at the start of the month. Then if my symptoms do get worse, or if I'm busy with other things, I haven't got to worry about finishing this off. So this is quite useful to get it out of the way now. So there's lots to mention, none of it sponsored or gifted as usual. I hope you enjoy it and let's crack on with it. So as I said, I've been out to see lots of Christmas lights and displays and other bits and pieces in London. There's a long list of places in my blog that I visited with links to my Instagram photo sets for each one. And there's also been a few videos I've posted on my channel as well. But just to run through the list very quickly, I went to Oxford Street, Regent Street, South Molton Street, Brunswick Shopping Centre, Leicester Square, where they've got a Christmas market. The Ever After Garden, which is a beautiful garden of remembrance in Grosvenor Square, where you can dedicate an illuminated rose to a loved one. That's quite nice. Carnaby, who are celebrating 25 years of their lights. So they had a bit of a greatest hits compilation in a way of all their different lights, which was quite nice. St Giles Square, Seven Dials, Covent Garden. I mean, their tree is always very impressive. The Ivy, that's the famous restaurant, of course, and St Martin's Lane nearby. Trafalgar Square, with their annual tree donated by Norway. Always looks better with the lights on. It always looks a bit kind of sorry for itself when the lights are off. But then there was a much better tree just down the Strand by Charing Cross Station, called the Tree of Kindness, and this was put up by the Social Bite Homeless Charity, and it basically keeps changing the patterns on it, lots of different colours and designs and things. So I've posted a video of that whole sequence because I just stood there for a good 8-9 minutes just filming the whole thing. It was quite absorbing. And it's just very nice, and people can donate gifts to help the homeless, so it's lovely. And the Savoy is also down the Strand, of course, so I walked past that too. Then there's Bond Street, Fortnum and Mason, St James's in Piccadilly, the South Bank, of course, where they've got lots of market stalls, and there's some decorations in Hayes Galleria down there. And then when I got to Tower Bridge on my South Bank walk, I was able to see Tower Bridge opening up to let a big warship through from the Royal Netherlands Navy. It seems strange to think that I've not actually seen a bridge lift in person since I've been in London, but I deliberately timed my walk to actually catch one because they publish the schedule of the bridge lifts on the Tower Bridge website. They don't always specify what the vessel is that's coming through. So when it's an anonymous vessel, like it was in this case, it can often mean that it's a warship or something like that. They don't want to kind of publish the details of too openly. So it's very impressive seeing that coming through, and I posted a video of it, which seemed to be quite popular. And also there's a few people in the comments as well who left a few useful pieces of information, so thank you to them for that. And then I went to St Pancras International Station as well, where they had a very impressive 33-foot tree in their railway station made up of lots of 2D representations of buildings and people from London. It was very, very impressive, actually. It's really, really cool. And I looked at King's Cross Station as well, where they also had a very nice tree, a more regular standard tree, but still very, very big and very, very nice. And then I also went to Battersea Power Station as well, which has been redeveloped recently into a big leisure complex, and they've got a new Northern Line station there, and it's pretty nice. It's not somewhere I'd go back to particularly, but it was nice to see their Christmas decorations. So yeah, that was nice looking at all that stuff. And as I say, there's a few videos on my YouTube channel, one of the Tower Bridge lift, one of that Tree of Kindness, and then one that's a compilation of some other places that I went to. Not every place, but some of the key ones that I got footage at. So I hope you enjoy looking through all that stuff, and the photos I've linked to in my blog post. But then apart from all that, my favourite outing of the month was actually going to see the Book of Mormon at the theatre with a couple of visually impaired friends of mine who were visiting London for a day. So it was great to see them again as well. And we kind of knew a little bit about the show in terms of the very basic plot synopsis, and we knew that the writers from South Park and a guy from Avenue Q were involved with it. So we knew there was going to be a bit of crude humour in there. We didn't really know anything else beyond that, though, other than the fact that it had rave reviews and won lots of awards. We didn't look into the plot in great detail, and we didn't look into the songs, we didn't listen to them in advance, because we didn't want to have any spoilers. So we just thought we'd go and see what all the fuss was about, and it's safe to say we can understand it. We were blown away by it. It is an incredible show. It's very, very funny. It's nothing like South Park, so don't worry about the fact that they're involved. Yes, there is a fair bit of crude humour in there, but the story is written very well. It's about a couple of missionaries, basically, from the Church of Latter-day Saints who go to a remote village in Uganda to try and convert the people there to their faith. But the people there are dealing with things like, AIDS and genital mutilation and an evil warlord and all this kind of stuff. Not exactly the gold mine you would think for comedy and music and stuff like that, but my goodness, they've done it well. The story is really nice. You empathise with the missionaries and the people of the village as well, and the lyrics are very cleverly written, and the choreography is just stunning. Such a variety of musical styles, and there's lots of wonderful costumes as well, and the planning that must have gone into some of those scenes and musical numbers and things, and the rehearsals and everything, it's just mind-blowing. And the show rewards rewatching, clearly, because there's no way you can take everything in, there's no way you can remember everything. And I reckon if I went back there again, I'll easily spot various things that I missed. They do audio-described performances. We didn't see one on this occasion, but we were still able to see well enough because we had a great front row seat. And the staff there were lovely. A lady actually looked after my friend's guide dog while we were there. But yeah, I will have to go back to an audio-described performance to look at some of the stuff in more detail on a touch tour, hopefully, and have some of the things described to me just to pick up on some things that I may have missed. But even without that, we were able to follow it. We were able to understand what was going on, and we were able to enjoy it. And yeah, it's just a lot of fun. It was a lot better than we expected it to be. We do now understand what all the fuss is about. And then back at home, in terms of Christmas stuff, Mum and I have obviously eaten far too much, as is traditional. There are a couple of shops that we focused on in particular. As always, we got our meat order from Marks and Spencer. So we got a lovely turkey crown and a 3-bird roast, which did us nicely for our Christmas and New Year dinners respectively. So yeah, we were very, very nicely fed. And yeah, they had lots of other nice treats as well, including mince pies, of course, plenty of varieties of those, and some luscious Yule logs, and some beautiful Belgian chocolate flaked truffles that I got as well. And I got them on an offer on my Sparks card. I've now got a digital version of their loyalty card, which they call Sparks. And basically, they were doing offers during the first 12 days of Advent, and I got some money off this box of truffles, which we really, really liked. The other great thing about the Sparks card is not only do you get random offers sent to you, the more you use it, the more they personalise the offers to you, but also every time you shop with them, they donate to a charity of your choice. So I chose Guide Dogs. That seemed to be the best one of the selection available. So yeah, very happy to support them. And then Sainsbury's have continued to be reliable with their weekly grocery deliveries that we get from them that we order online. So again, they had lots of nice Christmas stuff as well, including mince pies and Yule logs. And they had a Tunis cake as well, which Marks and Spencer also had. And we also got in tubs of sweets too. We got a tub of Celebrations and a tub of Cadbury's Heroes, not knowing that my aunt was going to buy us a tub of Quality Street as well, and a box of Nestle Winter Collection chocolates. So we had far too many chocolates to eat, but we ate them all, obviously, because they were there. And we had some biscuits I bought from Waitrose as well. There wasn't a lot of things in Waitrose that really caught my attention this year, but we got some nice biscuits from them and had some of their mince pies as well, and one or two other bits and pieces. So then moving on to stuff I've been watching, and there's a lot of this, as you can imagine. I'll start off with documentaries. There are a few programmes that my mother and I watched together while we were having our dinners, beginning with some about different London attractions. We didn't watch every single programme about every London place, obviously. We just picked a few that interested us. And we started off with a documentary on Channel 4 about the restoration of Big Ben, which has obviously been under scaffolding for a good few years now. So it's been lovely to see him back standing tall and proud again, and he obviously chimed in the new year. It was beautiful to see him do that again. And we had our New Year fireworks display back, of course, on the Thames, which was fantastic, with a lovely tribute to the Queen and nods to the Lionesses and Ukraine and Pride and stuff like that. It was really well put together. But anyway, this documentary about Big Ben was also really, really interesting, because it's incredible the amount of work that they had to do to get everything repaired, not just the mechanism itself, but also the work they did on the tower and the clock dials and stuff like that. So yeah, it was a really, really nice insight into how much went on there. And it is kind of the conclusion of a sporadic series they've been doing over the past few years, tracing the journey of these repairs. But this final episode gives a nice overview of it all, so you don't need to see the other episodes anyway. And then Channel 4 also had a show called Lighting Up Christmas, which looked at the preparations for the lights and displays in Kew Gardens and John Lewis and Oxford Street and some other places around the UK as well. So that was really nice, as was another Channel 4 show about London Zoo at Christmas and getting to see how they were getting the animals ready for Christmas there. That was quite cute. It was lovely to see the arrival of their new silverback gorilla as well, called Kiburi. I'm going to have to go and see him. Obviously, I've got membership now, so I can just pop in and out whenever I like. So it'd be nice to go and see if I can find him, because he does look very handsome. And then over on Channel 5, we saw a programme about Westminster Abbey and how they're preparing for Christmas this year. And over on ITV, there was a programme about the Savoy from last year that they repeated. So it's nice to see how the other half lived, because we can't afford to stay in a place like that. And both of those programmes were actually the conclusion of respective series on those channels. But we're not bothered about seeing the other episodes. We just wanted to see those festive editions out of curiosity, really, and they were quite interesting. And then also in terms of London attractions and talking about something that I looked through myself without Mum, thank you to my friend Claire for recommending the Rob's London channel on YouTube, where he posts lovely vlogs about different parts of London. In particular, recently he had a lovely tour of the Museum of London that he did, because that museum is closing in preparation for their move to West Smithfield. So it's a shame, because it's a lovely museum, but it was in a bit of an odd location. It'll be interesting to see what it's like in its new home when it opens. He's also got loads of other videos on there as well, including one about the London Transport Museum depot, which I've never been to yet, so that was a nice little tour as well. And there's a video about a beach by the Tower of London that people used to use, for example, and the smallest house in London, and a tea shop, and various other bits and pieces. So if you want to watch some London videos and you're not aware of his channel already, then go and check that out. I know there are lots of other channels out there about London places as well, of course. I know about quite a few of them already, but this one popped up during the pandemic when we were all distracted by lots of other things, so it was nice that Claire found it and pointed me to it. But then going back to documentaries that Mum and I were watching together, and we also saw a few about how different retailers were preparing for Christmas. And although they're kind of glorified adverts at the end of the day, really, it's still really interesting to see how they try and come up with innovative new products every year, because it's not an easy thing to do, and how they come up with new Christmas adverts each year, and how they kind of stock the shelves and try and tempt customers to buy the products. There's a lot of psychology involved, really. It's really interesting when you look at that kind of stuff in depth. So we picked just a few different retailers that had documentaries on the TV that we thought we'd check out. So our favourite documentary was about M&S over on ITV, because this was the first time that Marks & Spencer had allowed cameras into their stores and behind the scenes in their offices to show how they prepare for Christmas. So that was really interesting. And there was also a documentary about Waitrose on Channel 4 that we saw. And then on Channel 4's website, there were a couple of shows from last year about Sainsbury's and Liberty and how they were preparing for Christmas back then. So they're all interesting to watch. And then aside from all of that, I also saw a couple of other documentaries by myself as well. So I saw The Snowman, the film that changed Christmas, on Channel 4. This was in celebration of the animation's 40th anniversary. Hard to believe it's that long already. And also to mark the passing of author Raymond Briggs earlier this year, because obviously he wrote the book that inspired the animation. So it was a lovely and very interesting insight into how his book was brought to life for TV, and actually spoke to the original animators, Howard Blake, the composer of the music, and singer Peter Orty, who did Walking in the Air, not Ali Jones, as a lot of people think. He did that for a Toys R Us advert and released it as a single, but it was Peter Orty who sang it in the actual film. And then, of course, I watched The Snowman and its sequel, The Snowman and the Snow Dog, because they were on telly again this year. I don't watch them every single Christmas. Some people have a tradition where they watch them every year, but I don't. I just watch them, every few years or so. But I can perfectly understand why people like to watch them regularly, because they are beautiful animations. And then over on Sky, I saw The Unofficial Science of Home Alone, where comedians James Acaster and Guz Khan explored how the different sadistic traps that Kevin leaves to the wet bandits in the Home Alone film would actually affect them if it was happening for real. Because obviously in the film it's very cartoon style violence, whereas in reality they would be dead long before the end of the film. And this kind of thing has been done before, but this was quite fun because they had an engineer with them as well who was showing them what the injuries would be, and also how to survive the traps as well, so they could try and actually catch a kid in a mock house they had. But then also in that same show, Alex Brooker from The Last Leg, who was a massive Home Alone superfan, got to travel to Hollywood to meet a couple of people involved with the film. So we got to interview Daniel Stern, who played Marv, and Troy Brown, one of the stuntmen as well. And then he went to Chicago to have a quick look at the McAllister's house and their local church. So he was overjoyed by that, and it was lovely to see the interviews. They were very interesting. I didn't rewatch the Home Alone films themselves this year though, because I've seen them so many times I didn't feel I needed to. I had plenty of other things to watch. Like The Snowman, I just want to watch them every so often really. But it's just nice to get that behind the scenes look at it all and have a bit of fun with it. But I did watch a few movies this Christmas, of course, as is traditional. And this time it was courtesy of a few free rentals over on Google Play, because over the past year I've taken part in several accessibility research studies and projects, and I've been paid for quite a few of them as well. And I've been paid in different ways. So sometimes I get the money directly into my account. Occasionally I've been paid in Amazon vouchers, and occasionally I've been given vouchers that I can convert into my Google Play balance. So I've had a bit of money to spend there and just got myself a few rentals to try a few films out. So the first film I saw was Get Santa from 2014, and this is a British comedy starring the wonderful actor Jim Broadbent as Santa Claus himself, who crashes in London and loses his reindeer, and when he finds them and tries to get them back, people don't believe he's the real Santa, so he gets put into prison, and the only person who believes he is the real Santa is this kid who had discovered Santa in his garden shed earlier in the film, and he has to persuade his dad, who has also been in prison as it happens, to try and get Santa out of prison and rescue the reindeer, all this kind of stuff. So it's good fun. I quite enjoyed that. There's a lot of good humour and action sequences and effects in there, and it all feels nice and Christmassy, of course. And there were some other big name stars in there as well, like Warwick Davis as one of the prisoners, and Jodie Whittaker and various other people. So yeah, I enjoyed that. And then the next film I saw was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory from 2005. I'd seen the original 70s film, of course, when I was a kid a long time ago, but I hadn't seen the relatively more modern version, so I thought it was about time I checked it out. And it's good fun. It's as weird as you expect it to be, of course, given the fact that it's a Roald Dahl book, which is typically strange, but also the fact that Tim Burton's directing it and Johnny Depp is playing Willy Wonka, Joker. Johnny Depp plays the character wonderfully, and the factory looks really impressive. Visually, the film is really nice, and there's a lot of good humour in there, especially when the Oompa Loompas are singing songs to celebrate the different fates that befall the stuck-up kids as they travel around the factory. So yeah, that was a fun film as well. I enjoyed that. I wouldn't bother buying it on DVD necessarily, nor would I buy Get Santa. I don't necessarily need them in my collection. It's just nice to watch something a bit new and a bit different each year if I can. It's nice and easy to do so when you can rent films online like this. And then the other film I watched was one that I have, of course, seen before, which is Top Gun from 1986. I naturally watched that because the Maverick sequel that's currently getting rave reviews, so I thought I'd better rewatch the original. It's been quite a while since I last saw that, actually. So it was good fun to see that again. It's got a great soundtrack, of course, and the flight sequences, even now, look really impressiove. Yes, it's hard for me to keep track of what's going on in them sometimes because they're very fast moving, but I can work out what's going on from the dialogue usually, so I wasn't missing anything. And you've obviously got the love interest for Maverick in there as well, which is a little bit cheesy sometimes as you get in 80s movies, but that's part of the charm, really. So yeah, I enjoyed watching that again. It's not a film that I feel I need to own in my DVD collection, though. Yes, it's a classic and it's good fun, but it's not a film that I feel compelled to kind of rewatch on a heavy regular basis. It's just a fun film that's nice to revisit just every so often, really, and it's easy enough to do so when it's online like this. So then moving on to comedy, and there's a ton of stuff here, as you can imagine. So I'll start off with The Book of John, which is a new stand-up comedy DVD by Welsh comedian Rod Gilbert, and that's good fun. A lot of his comedian friends have been promoting this DVD on his behalf because he's been dealing with cancer treatment and gallbladder surgery recently, but he's also had issues in recent years as well with having a mini stroke and other bits and pieces that he talks about during the show. So it's really interesting to hear about that, but the key thing about that show is that he had to get a driver called John, and John is a little bit like Carl Pilkington, if you know him from the Ricky Gervais shows, and he has this kind of weird logic in how he views the world. And Rod decided to document a lot of it, and he's got some really funny anecdotes. And he talks about other bits and pieces too, not just about John. There's a whole routine about giving a sperm sample, for instance, that's very funny. So yeah, I enjoyed that. I'd never seen a full stand-up show of Rod's before. I'd seen a few appearances on Live at the Apollo quite a while ago, of course, and I've seen him on various comedy game shows, particularly Taskmaster, where he was brilliant. But yeah, I hadn't seen a full show, so I'm glad I took a punt on it based on his TV appearances I've enjoyed, because that was very funny. And I know he's got other DVDs from previous tours that have been out in the past, so yeah, maybe one day I'll get around to checking those out. And then there was a new show by Jason Manford broadcast on BBC One over Christmas called Recent Nostalgia, and this is from his recent tour that I went to see when I went to his gig in Folkestone. So I knew a lot of the material, but it's still very funny hearing it again. He's very, very good. And it's mainly about lockdown, really, and the impact that had on the gigs he had to do and his relationship at home, having to be around his partner 24/7 and stuff like that. And then at the end of the TV show, just like he's done on the rest of his tour, he got the audience singing and dancing along to some assembly bangers, as he calls them, so rave versions of school assembly songs, which are much more catchy and entertaining than the way we used to sing them as kids. That became so popular during his tour that he actually released a single with a medley of some of those songs, and then he released an album with some of the songs in longer versions as well, with some Christmas bangers as a medley as well. And it was all raising money for the Trussell Trust, so yeah, it's worth getting that. It's just a bit of silly fun, really, but it brings back a nice bit of nostalgia as well. I think that's why people love it so much. And then as a quick aside, if we're talking about singles being released in aid of the Trussell Trust, of course, we have to briefly mention Lad Baby and congratulate them on getting 5 Christmas #1s, which is a record that nobody's ever set before. Over the past 4 years, they've released songs about sausage rolls, parodying other hits, and last year they got Elton John and Ed Sheeran involved, so that was quite a big coup for them. This year they released a cover of Band Aid's Doing the Next Christmas called Food Aid, singing about food banks and stuff like that, and it just didn't have the same vibe, really. None of their songs have been masterpieces by any means, they're just silly novelty songs, and auto-tune has to work overtime to help them out, but this year it just didn't have the same vibe because they had understandably more serious lyrics, and the musical backing just didn't feel very inspiring or catchy, and the best celebrity they could get was Martin Lewis, the money-saving expert. But yeah, I don't begrudge them raising money and awareness for a great cause among their huge fan base, so fair play to them for that. But then moving back to stand-up comedy, and I also saw a couple of new specials that were broadcast on Sky Comedy this Christmas. So the first was Wallop by Rob Beckett. This is his first ever stand-up special, and it was good fun. He talked about his big teeth, of course, and doing a work-in-progress gig in a strange place, and serving food at weddings, and all sorts of other random things. And then Catherine Ryan had a new special called Mrs. Now, I've seen a couple of her stand-up specials in the past as well, but this new one is about living with her high school sweetheart, Bobby, who she married in 2019 after they were reunited while she was doing Who Do You Think You Are? They got married and then got forced into lockdown together, so of course there's a lot of comedy material that comes out of that, and also Bobby isn't very cultured in terms of British life, so there's a lot of stuff he had to get used to after moving over from Canada. So yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in there, and she has some nice interactions with audience members as well. And then over on the BBC they had a festive special of Live at the Apollo, of course, which was very nicely hosted by disabled comedian Rosie Jones, and she introduced Kenny Beaton and Eshaan Akbar, who I wasn't particularly familiar with, but they were all right. I wouldn't check out their full shows necessarily, but it was nice to see short sets by them. And then there was also a disabled comedian hosting a comedy show on ITV as well, Lost Voice guy Lee Ridley hosted the Christmas Comedy Club again this year, and he introduced ventriloquist Paul Zerdin and comedians Josie Long and Dara O'Brien. And he also had an improvising rapper called Abando Man, who I wasn't quite so struck on, but he was clever. He's just not my type of music. So yeah, that was a fun show on the whole. So then going on to sitcoms, and naturally I watched a few Christmas specials of sitcoms from years gone by that I really like. But I also bought the 40th anniversary Blu-ray edition for The Young Ones, the classic anarchic comedy from the BBC. And this new set is fantastic. It's got so many brand new extras on it. And it's been remastered as well, and all the episodes are uncut too. So among the extras, you've got brand new audio commentaries, you've got very rare studio footage, you've got other rarities of some of the cast performing elsewhere, you've got documentaries and stuff. So there's all sorts of bits and pieces on there. So I wrote a great big blog post about the show and all the extras on the Blu-ray set. And it got a very complimentary response from the producer of that set, Richard Lasso, who complimented me on Twitter and shared the post with his followers. So thank you to him for that. It was very kind. And then back on the TV, I saw this year's festive special of The Cleaner. And this is a sitcom starring Greg Davis as a guy called Paul Wickstead, or Wiki affectionately. And he's basically a guy who cleans up at crime scenes after the police have finished with them. So because it's a different crime scene in every episode, he meets different people each time, which adds a bit of variety to it. Nevertheless, I didn't get into the first series hugely. It was okay, but it wasn't something I would kind of buy or go back to. But I thought I'd check the festive special out anyway, and it was worth a look because in particular it had a neurodivergent actor at the heart of it called Robbie Curran, who was also invited to be part of the writing team to ensure that the representation of autism was authentic, and he played it very well. It got very complimentary reactions on social media and stuff, so it was really interesting to see kind of Wiki reacting to it and trying to get along with this guy. But it was worth a look. I'm glad I looked at that. And then over on ITV2 they had the latest festive special of Family Guy, of course. That show is long past its glory days, yes, but it's still fun to watch. It's still a nice way to kill 20 minutes, really. It's just a bit of silly, harmless fun. So moving on to various game shows now, and while having our dinners, Mum and I watched a few Christmas specials of Family Fortunes from years gone by that people have posted on YouTube. Mum also watched the festive editions of Richard Osman's House of Games, which I kind of saw a bit of as well, and she saw a few other shows on Challenge like Bullseye that she likes. But apart from that, I also personally watched a variety of other game shows that I like. So Taskmaster in particular had another New Year treat for us this year, and in these New Year episodes they kind of bring in people who aren't comedians necessarily, so people who perhaps wouldn't necessarily suit the format over a full series. Some would, but some wouldn't. It just kind of takes them out of their comfort zone. It's interesting to see how they react to it. So Sir Mo Farah was of course the standout contestant, and he won the episode. He was good fun. Carol Vorderman and Greg James I was also familiar with, so it was nice to see them. But I didn't know the other two quite so well. Musician Self-Esteem and YouTuber Amelia de Moldenberg were completely unfamiliar to me. You know, I looked them up obviously to find out who they were, but they were all right. I wasn't too bothered about them. But yeah, it was a fun episode anyway. They always have some fun tasks on there, so that was a good laugh. Then 8 out of 10 Cats Does Countdown also had a festive special on Channel 4, and despite the absence of the late great Sean Locke, of course, it was still a fun episode. They had a pretty decent lineup this time. They had John Richardson, of course, Jack Dee, Lee Mack and Rose Matafeo, and Joe Wilkinson made his usual random appearance, and even the guest in Dictionary Corner, Stevie Martin, wasn't too bad either. That can be a really mixed bag, the guests they have in Dictionary Corner. But yeah, it was a good fun episode. And then Jimmy Carr, as well as hosting that countdown show, also hosted the Big Fat Quiz of the Year, of course, which is an annual tradition. And again, this was one of their better lineups, I think. They had Stephen Merchant, Catherine Ryan, Richard Iowadi, Maisie Adam, Jonathan Ross and Rose Matafeo, all of whom I like, and had some interesting questions reminding you about various things during the year. So that's always a good way to kill a couple of hours, that show. I enjoyed that too. And then over on BBC Two, they finally broadcast the extended edition of last year's Christmas special of QI, which they hadn't shown before. They'd only shown the half-hour cut. And this is the episode that I was in the virtual audience for, so I was particularly looking forward to seeing it, and it was very funny. And they also had a new Christmas special this year too, of course, and now they've finally got into showing the XL editions of this latest series as well too, which is great. It always takes them a while to get around to that, but we seem to have a few in a row at least now, which is good. And Would I Lie to You, which is also back for a new series in January, had another great festive special too, with Gloria Hunniford, Guz Khan, Christopher Eccleston and Sophie Willan. Again, a lot of great banter and funny stories on there. And then over on Sky, I saw the festive special of Nevermind the Buzzcocks, hosted by Greg Davis, and this lineup wasn't so good really. It can be a bit of a mixed bag on that show. They had Pete Doherty from the Libertines, for example, who I find quite irritating, and Tom Allen is alright as a comedian, but he's not one of my favourites particularly, and Claire Richards from Steps, and I'm not interested in that band either, but it was still a good show. There was still some nice banter in there and stuff. It was still funny. And they had the ABBA tribute band Bjorn again on there as well, helping with the intros round, and they did a bit of a performance at the end too, so that was nice as well. And then moving on to other little bits and pieces of comedy that I haven't mentioned yet, obviously I saw the Christmas and New Year specials of The Last Leg. In the Christmas special, it was quite odd to see the three hosts all dressed up in green, with Adam as Shrek, Alex as the Grinch, and Josh as Kermit the Frog's version of Bob Cratchit. And they were joined by James Acaster and AJ Adudu, with a couple of Bake Off stars as well. So that was good fun as they kind of explored some of the more unusual Christmas traditions from around the world and played some silly games. And then for their extended New Year's Eve special, they had a bigger variety of guests, of course. So you had comedians Desiree Birch, Tom Davis and Mike Wozniak, broadcaster Ryan Clark, Paralympian Eddie Simmons, politician Saeed Awazi, the world's first disabled astronaut John McFall, and let's hope his training goes well. It's going to be fascinating to follow that journey. And Sophie Ellis-Bextor was singing on the show as well. She was quite good. So yeah, as it was a longer episode, there was quite a bit going on, of course. course. They looked back over events of the year, and Mike made some special cocktails relating to some of the key moments. There was a Neighbours parody, and Alex got to experience a bit of astronaut training, and Josh did a quiz of the year and so on. So it was a good laugh, as it always is. And then over on Sky, I saw Christmas Carol, which, as the name suggests, is an adaptation of the Charles Dickens novel A Christmas Carol. But this time it was unusual because it had a lady called Carol in the lead role, played by Saran Jones. It's set in the modern day, and basically Carol is obsessed with making money by selling lots of tatty festive goods, and she's on the verge of selling her company for a ridiculously huge amount of money, laying off all the staff as a consequence. And basically she's visited by three spirits who take on a journey to try and get her to change her ways and everything. You know the story. But these spirits that she meets are very interesting. So the Ghosts of Christmas Past are a tribute act to Morecambe Wise, playing the real Morecambe Wise in the show. And they're very good. They're called John T. Stevens and Ian Aspinall. And the guy playing Eric in particular was very, very lifelike. He was very good. There was also a play on BBC Four, incidentally, about Morecambe Wise, kind of paying tribute to them. I did try that, but didn't get into it, so I'm not mentioning that in this post. But then going back to Christmas Carol and The Ghost of Christmas Present and Yet to Come, where Joe Brand and Nish Kumar, respectively, who weren't quite as good as Morecambe Wise, but it was still nice to see them in it. So it was good to see it as a one-off. It's not something I'd watch again, I don't think, but it was nice to give it a go. It was all right. And then finally, in terms of audio comedy, my mother and I have continued to enjoy our usual Monday night favourites on BBC Radio 4. So the latest series of I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue, hosted by Jack D, finished this month and was replaced by the latest series of Just a Minute, hosted by Sue Perkins as part of the usual Monday night cycle. And also we've continued listening to older episodes of Just a Minute, hosted by the great Nicholas Parsons over on Audible. So we're still enjoying listening to all those shows. But then more importantly, I got gifted a lovely audiobook by my friend Claire called Olive, Mabel and Me by Andrew Cotter. And Andrew Cotter is a sports broadcaster and commentator, and obviously during lockdown he didn't have any work, so he decided to try just doing little funny videos, commentating on his dogs, talking to his dogs, and they went viral and became very, very popular, far more than he expected them to, and he ended up making a whole series of videos. Most of them are kind of very funny, humorous videos, but some are just cute videos of the dogs just being dogs, so they're really nice to watch. And this book is all about his love of dogs and how the viral videos came about, how he struggled to come up with new ideas to kind of satisfy people who were eager for more all the time, and the worldwide attention it got and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a lovely book, very well written. It's read in the audiobook by Andrew Cotter himself, which is wonderful, and yeah, it's just really sweet and cute, and there are amusing anecdotes in there and stuff like that. And that, at long last, is it. Thank you very much for watching that, and indeed congratulations if you watched it all the way through. I know there was an awful lot there, but I hope you found various bits and pieces in there to interest you that you enjoyed hearing about, and I hope you enjoyed looking through the blog post as well that goes with this. Looking ahead, I haven't got any shows booked for the next few weeks, which is just as well if I'm going to be ill for a little while. We'll see what happens there. I'll put an update in the description when this goes live as to how Mum and I are. But yeah, all that remains for me to say is to wish you a very happy new year again. I hope the 2023 is a good one for you, certainly better than previous years have been. We've had a few rough years lately, I know. And yeah, that is it basically. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe as per usual. Keep an eye on my blog and Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, as well as here, for things I might post in the weeks ahead. And yeah, I will see you for another video very soon. Bye for now.